Welcome to the Inside Out podcast. I'm your host, Jojo, and this is where we will navigate the mess together. That is mental, emotional, and spiritual. Let's get into it. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Happy Wednesday. And you guys, this is today's topic. And I think this is probably going to land for a lot of people because you've probably felt this at some point in your life. Even if you haven't even said it out loud, you can do everything quote unquote right? You can hit the goal, get the title, build that life that's supposed to feel good, but somehow you're still feeling empty or maybe disconnected. Like you're watching your own life from the outside instead of maybe living in it. So that's what we're going to get into today. It's looking at achievement without fulfillment, why doing well doesn't always feel good, and what actually is going to close that gap. My guest today is Pratiqk Jaani. He spent over 20 years as an accountant and tax advisor, working closely with entrepreneurs, and somewhere in those years, he started noticing a pattern. It wasn't money or the circumstances actually causing people stresses and disconnection. It was something underneath that. The perception that they were unconsciously living through. This noticing turned into his book called Dhrasti, the perception and method that he now teaches and helps people shift. So this perception is going to bring back clarity and a lot of calm. So Pratik, welcome to Inside Out.
Thank you, Jojo. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining me. So before we do anything, take me back. You're 20 years deep into your accounting business and tax advisory. You're working every day doing this. What was the moment that you realized that the numbers weren't actually the problem?
I came here at the age of 18. I was studying accounting, worked for other companies first before I started my own business. And every time I was consulting my client on doing their startup and things, I think it wasn't the numbers, it wasn't the resources that were either, slowing their growth or not exploiting the quality, the product they have, the opportunities, is their own mindset, their limiting beliefs, their attitude towards fear of failure and fear of losing what they have. And I have experienced that by myself. I wanted to go full time on my own business. And I kept telling myself that once I have saved, 6 months worth of bills, I'm going to start my business. And it took me 8 years not to save 6 months of, expenses, but to realize that the moment is now. And I overcame those fears which were holding me back. So it wasn't actually about the money. It's about my internal state. And when I learned this, I started sharing with my clients, and they saw me as I was motivating them, and they felt energized when I talked to them. And when I give them counter arguments to their belief system, it was interrupting their patterns. And for a short time, they could do what I suggested them to do, or they wanted to do, but they needed some boost from someone. So they were successful. And then after a month or two, when that goes away, they come back to their default state, and then they come to me again. And that was like ongoing process. I learned to overcome my fears when I was diagnosed with tuberculosis in 2017. And I couldn't get up from the bed for 3 months. And what I realized is I asked myself a question out of nowhere, this random question, like, what if I passed away in this, illness? What would happen to the things which are holding me back to the life I want to live? Like starting my own business and expand and grow. What is that is really stopping me? And it was all my own fears. So I came across motivational speakers around that time. I came across lots of books for changing our mindset from negative, scarcity or fear-based mindset to the positive mindset. And I became positive, and I was sharing the same knowledge and experiences with my clients. But 4 years ago, I came across rapid transformational therapy, which is RTT. It's a form of hypnotherapy created by Marisa Peer. And what I learned is that the negative belief or the fear-based beliefs we were learning in our childhood from the events that were happening around us. So I hypnotized a number of people on anger, self-doubt, self-worth, lack of self-worth, weight loss. And there was something common which I really found, which was when they went into childhood, there was something happening outside, and how their subconscious perceived that as an emotional experience, it formed that pattern of belief. That's the neurological pattern. So if one of the parent was angry to the other surrendered or submitted, and things went in the way of the one who got angry. And as a child, that person saw a number of events where the person who got angry got things their way. So this child learned that if you want things your way, you have to get angry. And that's how my client started getting angry. And the similar style was in everyone. And when I did self-hypnosis to myself, when I had my own challenges, I actually saw that this is something I learned in my childhood. So I was helping people with this. And then there was a moment where I got to the state, because I've done meditations, I've done Kriya Yoga, I've done Sadhguru's Inner Engineering Program, I've done psychedelic in Peru, I've done Dr. Joe Dispenza's formula course, I've done law of attraction and all sorts of things to make my life better. You find something new, you experiment it and it helps you, and then you move on to the advanced level and you go, you do that journey. So I think my tuberculosis, coming back to your question, my tuberculosis was something that really made me think for the very first time that the only reason I was living how I was living was how I was conditioned in my childhood.
Mm-hmm. So this thing that we have inside of us, this lens that we're seeing everything through, you're saying that can be completely rewired. Is that only through hypnosis, or is it is that what you're calling Dhrasti method, or what? Can you kind of clarify what you mean?
Okay. That isn't what I call Dhrasti method, because that's something I was doing, which I learned from, Marisa Peer. So we help client remove those negative beliefs and then put positive beliefs in a way of positive affirmations, which becomes a recording and which people hear for 30 days. It's like that repetition will eventually reprogram our mind. But what I discovered or realized is at one point when I was meditating, I had this thought that the painful experiences which I was going through was my learned experiences, and I'm changing them to positive experiences. But again, there are learned experiences. So what is deeper than that? And when I shifted my awareness to that state, I felt the wholeness, I felt the completeness, I felt that abundance. I was complete like an ocean. No extra water can change that state. And if you take away a lot of water away from this ocean, it is still the same ocean. I felt that. It became my experience. And then what I did is I literally relived my life in my head from this state. And what I saw is, when I was born, I knew nothing. I couldn't speak. I knew my parents were trying to say something, which I understand now what they were saying. But in that moment, I didn't understand. They were just sounds to me. It's like, somebody speaking in a different language. For us, it's just a sound. It doesn't have any meanings attached to it. So as a child, I didn't know anything when I was 6 months old. And then I went to my later period when I was like 18 or 21. And I went to the events where I was really happy. And this part is there still with that wholeness, but is seeing me experiencing the happiness. I then went to an event which was painful and I was crying. I didn't know what to do. This part was like that ocean watching me experiencing the sadness and the pain. And then what I realized is that every experience we have learned, every emotions are learned emotions. The events take place externally, but how we interpreted that subconsciously as growing up created our reality, and somehow accumulation of lots of beliefs created our identity. So our identity is what we are good at, what we believe the life should be, what we believe the world is. And, as we were growing up, the activities which we did, now some of them would have been praised by our parents or people around us. Some of them would not have been praised, or some of them could have even been punished for. So the activities which we did or performance we did, which were praised, we put them in our good book. And the ones which were punished, we would try not to do them again. And that kind of forms our behavior, that forms our identity. So by the time we are 12, 13, I know that I'm Pratik. I know I have to study hard. I know I have to be kind. I know I have to be helping people. That is all programming. And this is all really good. What happened is this programming has a default state of lack, which means that it wants you to chase fulfillment externally. So we look at other people, how they chase fulfillment. So people go for money, people go for success, people go for love, people go for luxury, and all these things became for something for us to chase, to then receive, feel that fulfillment, which was there before we started learning this. So we forgot our true self. So when I say perception, we operate from conditioned self, which is operating from lack. That's this, very nature to operate from that makes us do things. But then we are emotionally attached to the outcome, which is the fulfillment. But because we don't know, we set targets that I want to make $1 million. And when we hit the $1 million, we feel, we believe that after getting $1 million, I will be fulfilled. It lasts for a week or two, and then the lack wakes up again, and then you have a next target of 10 million. Because the wholeness is a state, it doesn't have defined success to make that fulfillment as a feeling. No matter how much we receive materially, it is never going to change that state, because the state has no numbers. It's emotions. Emotions cannot be quantified with numbers. So 1 million, 10 million, 100 million is going to give exactly the same lack. But because when we understand now through Dhrasti method that this was all learned experiences and you were always whole, from that point, when we engage in any activity, we are receiving bliss from being part of that activity rather than having to expect something in return. Because it's conditioning. He wants you to do something and expect something in return. And that's where we are struggling. So when we receive what we expect, we get happy. When we don't receive what we expect, we get disappointed. But when we are operating from wholeness, by acting, doing what we were doing gives us joy. Now, if we get it, it's an experience of happiness. And if we didn't get it, it's an experience of sadness. We don't take that I am sad, I'm experiencing the sadness. And that's where the difference is. Like if we eat chili and we know it's spicy, if we eat sugar, we know it's sweet. But we don't put label either one of them is good or bad, because chili has its own flavor, sugar has its own flavor. It's just like that, happiness is an experience, sadness is an experience, and you won't attach those experiences to yourself. That changes the complete perception, because everyone somehow learned to live the life from the perception of that conditioned self. And we are not wrong, because everybody is doing that. So when everyone does it, it becomes normal, because we don't know any other way. But when we start to live from this wholeness, everything becomes only experience. There is nothing to manifest, because if you manifest wealth, if you're trying to use law of attraction to manifest wealth, you are again chasing for fulfillment externally. Yes, you have changed your methods to achieve, but you're still chasing fulfillment. Whereas if you are operating from wholeness, you don't manifest objects, you manifest different experiences without being attached to the outcome.
So I want to ground this, because there's a lot that you're saying, but just for our listener, what you're saying is two people can essentially be living the exact same realities, whether that's a job or an experience, but they're going to actually interpret it completely different. And what you're saying, their interpretation is their perception. So if they're coming from it from a wholeness, they're going to have a different reality. But if they're coming from lack, they're going to have a different outcome.
Yes.
So when you, I'm assuming you're working with your clients directly to navigate the gap between that. What is the
Mm-hmm.
process and how can people kind of look at their own lives? Maybe let's bring a relationship for instance. If they're
Mm-hmm.
in a relationship and they think, "Okay, this is supposed to be fulfilling. This is supposed
Mm-hmm.
to make me happy. I'm supposed to get married and have the kids and the house and the whole life, right?"
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
they're not fulfilled. Where
Yes.
how do you bridge that gap between them being not fulfilled and actually reaching fulfillment in that place because they want that and that's what but they don't feel it internally.
Yes. So I like, it's a really good question. And I'm going to say that the very reason you feel that you want that want actually came from conditioning. So the process is that, okay, why do you really want that person to make you feel fulfilled? So what happens when we were growing, and I will share my own journey, when I was growing, I saw people getting married, I saw people getting engaged, and they were so happy, and I see the flowers and, the cards and gifts and heart-shaped balloons, and especially movies really magnify the expression of love. And we create certain expectations from our married life. Like, this is how I want my partner to be. And this is what I'm going to do. What we also see is, you give a lot in order to receive the love. And that's one of the, basic thing we learn about love. We don't receive love automatic. We give something because as we were growing up, as I said earlier, the actions we took, which were praised, we got that attention. We do more for it, we do more of it. So, but if you go out to some strange place, you live in a hostel where nobody knows about your talent, and if you did something which was no longer acknowledgeable in that culture or in that place, you're not going to get same reaction from people or same appreciation. And that's where you are going to feel disappointed. And that's going to give you a lot of pain because previously you were trained to receive appreciation for what you did. But that's what the conditioning does to us, that we set expectations for what we give. So what happens is, let's say we met a new person, we are dating, and slowly, we feel that we're going to feel the wholeness, the completeness with this person. But because we are operating from lack, there is always that doubt. It's always going to be there. Is it really going to last for long? Is it really? And what happens is if the other person has a different lack, because I have my own criteria of how I want my partner to be, and the other person may have different criteria of how they want their partner. So, initially we are attracted because love is something, it's not just about the emotion. There is also our evolutionary process with our body's mechanism that it wants to reproduce. So there is also physical attraction, right? And then there is a love which operates from lack and it wants to receive something. So what happens is, after the relationship is more secured, so it's like you had £1 million target and you achieved it. And then after a while, because of your lack is always there, you don't know what to do, because with money you can have £1 million and then you can, aim for 10 million. So you've got something else to look to. Maybe that would make me fulfilled. But in relationship, it isn't there. And also, if you didn't receive what you wanted from your partner, you feel disappointed. And what we do is what we learn from others. I mean, our coping mechanism is also a learned mechanism. So either we would be upset with our partner, or we create scene, or, we, instead of when we are together spending good time, we would actually end up arguing about what that person is not doing. And the reason this is happening is because this is a lack. And now let's say you broke up and you went to a new partner. So when you have a new partner, you have high hopes that, okay, everybody is not the same. The new partner is going to fulfill me the way I want. And after multiple relationships, what you realize is your experience was quite similar, because it was your lack which you wanted them. You made the partner to be fulfilling your lack and make you feel complete. And because lack is your conditioning, you can have 100 relationships. But if you don't change your inner state, you are going to feel the lack. And, when we talk about extramarital relationships, right? that is only people, look for fulfillment. So until you actually have that person, you have those hopes that, no, when this person is like full time with me, like committed, I'm going to feel that fulfillment. So we do everything, everything becomes effortless for us. We can wake up 5 o'clock in the morning to say good morning and all that thing because we want that person. But once that person is there, we might say we take each other for granted, but it's not that. Even though we had that person, our lack is still there. So it now realizes that this isn't what I thought it would do. So now you're not happy again. Now, if we see this whole scenario from wholeness, what happens is that you are complete by yourself. You are whole. You don't need another person
But
to...
before you get there, how do you get to wholeness? Because a lot of people, I'm sure, are listening being like, okay, I can relate. I've gone from relationship to relationship, and there's always this thing that's not quite right, and I don't know what it is. But yeah, I'm coming from lack, and I'm trying to have that person fulfill me, and blah, blah, blah. But coming from wholeness, it's not like you just like click an on switch in your brain and you're like, and now I'm whole. It's like, what is like the step process or one thing that someone can shift in their perception to get there?
To be honest, it is something like pressing a switch, okay? It's just about finding the switch and accepting this is the switch. That's the journey. So my journey was, what you're feeling, be honest about what you feel with yourself, because then only you will be able to dig deeper and find the answers, right?
That's so true. A lot of people are lying to themselves all the time about what's underneath. Okay, that's
one thing. And I think as long as you are open to explore your own self and be honest about accepting what you will find there. My journey was that I found that the thing I call love and how I interpret love, how I had a desire to have a certain partner is something I learned in my childhood, and that somehow created that desire. So when I saw that for myself, and I'm going to share how you can actually see it without... So the 3-day event, the Dhrasti method, is actually a process which isn't going to teach you any techniques, but it's going to get you to that switch. And after that 3 days, that switch is going to be auto on. So whenever you are in that state where you need that switch to turn on, it will turn on automatic. But I'm not going to go there right now. So when you dig deeper, so I'm going to give an example. If we go to a magician show and we love the magic tricks, because for us, we cannot believe how that's been done because it's not possible for us to do it. And we are thrilled by it. We feel excited to see the magic. And then an hour later, the magician actually shows his most amazing trick, how he does it. And now the fun is over, right? So if I was seeking love and I was so much disheartened by my partner hurting me, I want to blame the partner because that's what everyone else does, because we make other person responsible to complete us, right? Instead of us taking the responsibility of our own self. But instead, if I went deeper, I actually did a semi-hypnosis. I'm going to share how to do it. Anybody can do it by themselves.
Wow.
I actually saw in my childhood how I learned what love is, how I learned how I express love, how I learned what I should expect from my partner. That's like me learning the magic trick. And as soon as I learned it, it vanished. Like I no longer need that because this is the wholeness. I was already whole when I was born. I was told repeatedly by events outside that I needed a partner to fulfill me. And that applies to everybody.
Of our own BS, excuse my French, drops and we're able to see it clearly.
I think the second challenge is when we see the truth, our identity, we call ego, right? That's how we identify ourselves. It doesn't want to lose its identity. So it wants its familiarity. So it resists to accept that this blissful state is the true self. That's where the challenge is. But the more open you are, and the more you are able to accept what you are finding, it's easy. It gets quicker.
And this is Dhrasti method, right? This is
a part of Dhrasti method. It's like a teaser. You can taste it.
Before we do that, just for our friend in the room listening, Pratik does a 3-day method. And it's like a retreat style thing. I didn't mention that. And he's actually going to give us a little insight right now of some of the things we can do by ourselves practically at home that can help us kind of understand this veil, this layer that is blocking the reality. So yeah, go for it.
Okay. So there are two exercises I'm going to mention, and if you do them together, then you will experience something. And you don't have to say it to anybody, just be honest with yourself, okay? So exercise number 1 is really simple. You can just sit somewhere and, close your eyes just so that you can focus what is really happening inside. And you take a breath as normal, hold it for 3 seconds, and then exhale. And then hold it for 3 seconds again. And then inhale again. And what I would like you to do is when you have these pauses, feel what you're feeling in that pause, which is deeper than this breathing. So observe, a couple of pauses, just observe what state you feel. Initially, you'll feel like nothing. But that nothingness, just hold on to that nothingness. Okay? And then, so this is exercise number 1. I want you to remember that nothingness. And then, if you have 10, 15 minutes, I would do these both exercises at the same time. So you lie down on a couch or a bed, and relax your body completely. So you can do the same breathing without holding, but as you exhale, remove any contractions, any tension from every single muscle. What it does is it brings our brain into theta frequency, so we have more access to our subconscious mind. And just pick one emotion, for example, anger, and command your subconscious mind that I want to know how I learned to get angry. I'm going to count from 5 to 1. And on 1, you're going to show me what happened in my childhood or whenever where I learned the anger. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And again, you be open to it and you will see something in your childhood. It could be daytime or a nighttime. You could be outdoor or indoor. And you will see something is happening. And whatever you see that is happening, just observe what you're feeling. It's your emotions, because emotion is the programming, not the event. And then I would like you to do one extra thing. So what you're feeling is how your subconscious is interpreting that event. It's the meaning of that. But then remember that state of pause, which you just learned earlier. Go to that pause state and then revisit this whole event. And what you will see is that the state is there, is watching what you were feeling when you were perceiving that event to get angry. That state which is watching. So at the moment I'm speaking words and you're listening the words, and there is something in you listening that sound, and there is something behind that which you will see is watching you listen my words. That something is our true self. That something is you felt when you pause your breath. You took a pause between the breaths. And it's that state. Now, if you did these 3 things and see what is the common state which was within you, that's what the true self is. Now, I know it may not happen in a first time because we're not aware of doing the imagination. And when I said, go to the childhood, how it appears. So if you are practicing visualization, that should be very easy for you. But if you're not, then, how do you remember your past? If you had to close your eyes and, think of your last holidays, what you did, how does it appear, those images? These images comes exactly like that. So it's very easy for you to interpret. So the 3D method actually is structured in a way where it's got number of exercises which will take you closer and closer to your true self. And it also includes that you will see your life journey from the true self. So you can easily separate the conditioned self and see the whole life, just do a recap of your life from the true self. And you will feel it. You'll feel exactly what was happening. At the end of 3 days, you should be able to be conscious of your thoughts. So you won't just get a random thought to go and do something. You won't be impulsive anymore. You choose what you want to think about. And when you choose it, you know that your thought creates emotions. You will see these things. Your thought creates your emotion. Your emotion creates your action. And that action will have the reaction, which then feeds back to the system. And it creates that loop of our experiences.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I think that's really powerful for people to dive into. Is this mostly online or is it in person, or how
It is in
this...
person, and it's a resident one. So our next event is in September in London, and there is a plan either later this year or early next year. We're going to do it in the United States. I don't know the city or anything, but I'm talking to some people, just like yourselves. I was doing one podcast and they were really, really keen for me to go and deliver some of the sessions. So that is kind of something in a pipeline. But yeah, the 3 day is there. But what I suggested, and if you saw something in these 2 exercises, I think the more you get to see how you learned that particular emotional experience, you can do one emotion at a time. And, over 10 days, you would have learned how you learn 10 emotions. And you can ask, give me another example of anger. Give me third one. Give me fourth one. And it will keep giving you different events, how your subconscious perceived that. So when you see that, oh my God, how I interpreted these events was learned, and I'm reacting out of that learned expression, I'm not going to do it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And not only that, something else happens, because now you also know the other people are acting out of their conditioning, because they are also operating from their conditioned self. So now you won't be defending yourself if somebody comes and accuses you for something, because you just know it. You will just be calm and just, be relaxed in that state.
That's beautiful. Well, before I let you go, I want to get messy mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And you guys, I want you to think about these questions for yourself. We might answer, we might not, but mentally, what story have you been telling yourself? And maybe it's about not being enough. And where did that story come from? Emotionally. Where in your life are you doing well but not feeling well? And what is underneath that? What emotion? What is that? What Pratik was just saying? What is that layer that you need to go and uncover? What emotion do you need to, is it anger? Is it something else? Show me something else. Can you get into that meditative state and that visualization and really uncover what those emotional blocks are? And spiritually, if you dropped the belief that fixing your life is what will make you better and feel better, instead, what if you asked, is the way that I'm seeing my life shaping how it feels? And can you flip that from a spiritual lens? And does that look different? Well, Pratik, thank you so much for joining me. And where can people find you, connect with your 3-day retreat, whether that's in the UK or the US?
Certainly. The website is called dhrastimethod.com, and it has multiple resources on the method. There is a YouTube series I've started recording, expanding making deeper conversations on the concepts in the book. And the 3-day method. I think the best thing is for them to, become register their email address, and there's no regular junk emails or anything, but any important announcements like our next event in USA and dates like that, or something really valuable will be shared from those emails to keep in touch. And, if they've read the book, if they've tried this, and if they have any personal question, they can email to us, and I'll do my best to get back to them with their tailored answer.
Amazing. Do you have social media?
I do. I'm on Instagram, on Facebook, LinkedIn. And, I was talking to somebody this morning and I was meditating and I had this thought, like how we have evolved from, animals to Homo sapiens and then humans. And the moment we started to think, we built all of this, right? Over the thousands of years. However, because the conditioning was necessary for us to go through, to create these experiences, but without becoming that experience, somehow we didn't learn that. I mean, some people who were yogis or on full-time spiritual path are enlightened beings, they experience that. But now I think it's accessible to everybody. And if we see any more evolution in human, is that everyone starts living from the state of wholeness. I think that should be the next evolution in humankind. And I think this is a beginning. And what I've realized that I didn't go to Himalaya for 20 years and meditate. I was living my life just like everybody else, right? And whatever I experienced, I was driven automatic. I didn't make any efforts to do that. And, if one has 3 days of their lifetime and they can transform themselves from living from conditioned self to the whole self or their real self. And maybe over the 100 years, 200 years, there will be a new world where everyone's living off the wholeness, the completeness, or the true self. Thank you, Jojo, for having me.
Of course. Thank you so much for joining me. And you guys, this will all be linked in the show notes. And you know where to find me at _insideout.podcast. Don't forget to tune in every week and subscribe to the Substack. Otherwise, have a great week, you guys, and have an amazing summer. Bye.